Y is for BookTube. No, it's not. Y is for BookTube. Oh my god. Y is for BookTube. I'm special. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name's Kit, and this is my world. And I'm going to be doing a tag today because I'm Tag Man. You may have noticed. This tag is going to be the K to Z tag, or the K to Z tag if you're American. This is a combination of the second two tags in the 3-tag trilogy by Jim at Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. The 3 tags will be linked in the description below. I've already done the first one, so this is me now completing the trilogy, doing the second 2. And I was tagged by Jere at Drawn to Stories. I wasn't really tagged. He said that other people could do it if they wanted to, and so I've decided to do it. I was going to do it anyway. I'm using him as my excuse because he very conveniently put all the questions very neatly in his description box, and also links to the other tags, which was very handy. So I've used Jere's channel as the jumping off point for this tag. So without further ado, let's go. Question number 1. K is for King. What is your favourite book about royalty, fictional or real? Easy peasy. Oh, hang on. A lot of the books I love actually centre around royalty, now that I think of it. The first thing that popped into my head immediately was Prince Caspian. I love the Narnia books. Not all of them, but several of them I love very much, and Prince Caspian is definitely one of my favourites. And also, now that I think of it, probably Prince of the Blood as well, by Raymond E. Feist. It's one of his Midkemia books. Feist, as you're probably sick of hearing, also co-authored my favourite ever trilogy, which is the Empire trilogy. But for the purposes of this question, I'm going to say Prince of the Blood. Although actually, all of Feist's Midkemia books focus very prominently on the nobility and the royalty. So they're all royal and noble books. There are kings, queens, princes, dukes, all of those really cool things. But I'm going to say Prince Caspian and Prince of the Blood. L is for Librarian. Who is your favourite librarian? Well, this one is just ridiculously easy to answer. Of course, it's Carrie from Very Literary Carrie, and I'm saying it very carefully. Carrie is delightful. She's got a fabulous channel. She's a really bookish person, and she knows her stuff. She talks very insightfully and eloquently about the things that she loves, and she is a librarian. BookTube royalty. M is for magazine. Do you have any magazine subscriptions or a favourite magazine? No. Actually, I'm going to give you a little bit more than that this time. I don't read magazines. I don't read any print magazines, newspapers, any of that stuff. And of course now I don't do physical books either. But I've never been into magazines. They've never really floated my boat. The closest I get to being a magazine consumer would be a magazine formatted programme on television. Something like The South Bank Show, presented by Melvyn Bragg, a long-running arts and culture show on television. But really, no, I don't do magazines. N is for news. Where do you usually find your news? YouTube. Like many British people, I used to tune into the BBC News because as a nation, we were conditioned into believing that the BBC is a reliable news source, and to a certain extent they are, but they are also the propaganda arm of the government, and they don't say anything bad about anyone who they're hoping to get interviews and cooperation from in the future. So the BBC is no longer a trusted news source as far as I'm concerned, and certainly none of the main network news stations in America are trusted. So I get my news from the internet pretty much wherever I can find it, on YouTube or anywhere else where people are reporting what's actually happening, what they're witnessing with their own eyes, and they're not censoring anything or altering anything because of their own political agenda. But on the whole, I kind of avoid the news nowadays because it's depressing. I like this one, Jim. This is O. O is for oh fuck. I don't have a prompt for O, so you can make up your own. Excellent. For that, I'm going to say originality, and I'm awarding the Originality Prize to Catherine Kerr, who you're sick of hearing about, but she's brilliant, so get over it. Catherine Kerr gets the Originality Prize this time for two things. The first one is her use of reincarnation as a major plot device, and also just the way her books are structured. Everything in her books is all focused around the notion of reincarnation and the characters making mistakes in one life and then fixing it 6 lives later in a different book. I love that stuff. And also Dweoma, which is Kerr's version of magic. It's her magic system in the Devry books and beyond, and it is by a very long way the best, most realistic, most nuanced magic system I have ever read. And I've read a few. I know I seem like someone who doesn't read very many books, but over the course of my life I have actually read quite a lot of fantasy, and I've discovered quite a few magic systems, and most of them are poo. My fantasy books tend to focus more on the story and the characters and the politics and all that sort of thing. I'm not really into sorcerers throwing fireballs or shooting lightning out of their fingertips, and neither is Catherine Kerr. Her magic system is kind of organic and natural and based around real world magical practices by various cultures around the world, and it's all very rooted in reality and sort of herb lore and rituals and stuff, rather than magical superpowers. I love all of Catherine Kerr's work. What can I say? I'm a fan. P is for penguin, and if you're British you'll understand why I stuttered that. It's a chocolate bar. Anyway, P is for penguin. Which is your favourite publisher? HarperCollins. I don't even have to think about that one. If you just take a brief glance at my bookcase, you will see that the vast majority of books are by HarperCollins. Well, Voyager, but HarperCollins, and they have provided some of my most favouriteest fantasy. Q is for queer. Who is your favourite LGBTQI plus author? Me! Well, no, not really. I wrote a book, but it's not published yet, so it doesn't count. I'm going to say Stephen Fry. I flippin' love Stephen Fry. He is a national treasure. He's an institution in this country. He has done pretty much anything and everything that a person can do in terms of the arts. He's been a straight actor, a comedy actor. He's had his own sitcom. He's had his own comedy double act. He's written books. He's written a film. He directed a film. He has a TV game show. He acts as a guest star in American TV shows. He was in Bones. he was in The Hobbit. He was one of the good things about The Hobbit, in my opinion. He's just an all-round good egg. Everybody loves Stephen Fry. He's a poet. I mean, he's been to jail. he's an interesting character. He's windswept and interesting, as Billy Connolly would say, and genuinely nice guy. Everybody loves him, even though he's always the cleverest guy in the room, and quite often clever people are hard to like, but he is at pains to be very, very nice with his cleverness and not to cause offence, and he's done it very successfully. He's also the best awards show host I've ever seen. He's marvellous. I can't praise him enough. And although I've only read one of his books and I didn't like it, but we'll gloss over that. He is queer and he's an author, and so he is my answer for this question. R is for Russia. Do you have a favourite novel, poem or writer from Russian literature? Well, I had to scratch my brain a little bit for this one. As you will no doubt imagine, I've developed a little bit of a reputation for liking children's books and fantasy and not being a particularly intellectual kind of reader. So it may surprise you to know that I do actually have an answer. And obviously, it's not Pushkin, it's not Tolstoy, it's not Dostoevsky. Those would be too obvious and a lie, because I haven't really read any of them. But I'm going to say Sergei Yesenin. He's a very celebrated, quite famous Russian poet, and kind of a national hero at one point. He had a very tragic life, a very fascinating life, although, in fairness, it would be very hard to find a Russian writer of any type who didn't have a very fascinating, interesting and tragic life. It seems to be their thing. But Yesenin was particularly interesting, well, certainly for me. First of all, he was a very pretty young man, and he came from a very bucolic, rural environment, and he wrote about that, and I like that kind of writing. I like stuff that evokes trees and fields and open space, and he did that very well in his early work. And then of course he became political and was involved in revolutionary type stuff and was very excited about all of that and became quite a controversial figure. And like many Russians, he ended up dead in mysterious circumstances. The most popular, the most obvious thing is that he hung himself, although there are many people who think that he was actually murdered by agents. But I tend to think that it was probably just the simple thing. He was depressed. He had a lot of stuff going on in his pretty little head, and he was depressed, and I can relate. So he had a tragic end, but he had an absolutely fascinating life. He was married 4 or 5 times, I think, and at least 2 or 3 of those wives were famous historical figures in their own right. Well, one of them was, what was her name? The dancer. I'm going to have to look it up. Bear with me. Isadora Duncan. He was married to Isadora Duncan, of all people, and also a famous actress, and he had a very interesting and dramatic life, and all of that appeals to me. So anyway, that's my guy. That's the Russian guy that I picked. I hope you approve. S is for science fiction. What is your favourite science fiction novel? The Bicentennial Man by Isaac Asimov. And this was kind of a messy one for me, because the book existed as a book, The Bicentennial Man, and then it was kind of rewritten and co-authored in a slightly different version, and then it was made into a film, and it's hard to know which is the one that I like the best. I like the fact that in this one book, because I'm not an Asimov fan, in fact I can't bear science fiction most of the time, being brutally honest, but this one book actually made me cry, and not only that, it made me cry for a robot. That's going to annoy a lot of people because, of course, by the time the robot dies, he's no longer a robot, he's a human. But what I'm saying is the book touched me emotionally, and it's very rare for science fiction to actually have any emotional impact on me at all. Although, now that I think of it, Short Circuit also made me cry. Remember Johnny Five? Yeah, that made me cry. But I was young. Anyway, moving on. T is for trope, tag, and many other things. You can create your own prompt for T. Well, I've decided to be lazy and just think of a couple of books that begin with T. And the first one is Tarzan. I love Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. These are classic sort of pulp fantasy-ish adventure sort of books. I just like the guy running around in his loincloth, making funny noises and swinging from the trees. I grew up with Tarzan. I grew up with the old black and white Tarzan movies starring Johnny Weissmuller, Maureen O'Sullivan, and Johnny Shepherd as Boy, Tarzan's son, and Cheetah, the chimpanzee, and I just loved the whole thing. I remember the word to make the elephant pull the rope that makes the elevator go up and down for Tarzan's magnificent house in the trees. Ungawa. I haven't seen a Tarzan film since I was maybe 10 years old, but I can still remember that when you want the lift to go up, you say Ungawa. So I don't actually know if it's a real word or a made-up word. It might be something in Swahili, I don't know. But those old black and white Tarzan movies were fabulous. I adored them. And those were what then got me into the books. Anyway, I digress. Another T. This will be an obscure one for most of you. And this is a book I remember from my school days, and I think I remember it because it was one of the few books that I actually enjoyed at school, and it's The Turbulent Term of Tyke Tyler. So it's many T's. I like alliterative titles, and The Turbulent Term of Tyke Tyler definitely fits this question. And it was an interesting book. Obviously, it's for young children, but it's interesting because it has a lot of representation that you would expect in books written more recently, and it has a surprise twist ending. Tyke Tyler is a kid who's always getting in trouble, and the book is written in a very interesting style that just takes you through his daily life at school and all the various trouble that he gets into with his best friend, Danny, I think. And I'm now going to spoil the ending. I don't usually do spoilers. In fact, I'm allergic to spoilers, but I'm going to spoil this one because there's no real point in discussing this book unless I tell you this. But if you're ever considering reading this book, you might want to plug your ears for the next few seconds. I will wave at the camera when I've finished with the spoiler, okay? The twist at the end is that Tyke Tyler is actually a girl. I love it. The book allows you to assume that Tyke is a boy, and then in the final chapter it's revealed very subtly that Tyke is in fact a girl, and that made the film particularly interesting and exciting for me at that age. Anyway, U is for unicorn. What is your favourite mythical animal? Unicorns. I love unicorns. They're horny. That aside, I just think they're beautiful, magnificent creatures. Also, Pegasus. Pegasus is the winged horn from Clash of the Titans. The good one, not the shit remake. But also from Greek mythology. I think that's what came first. But yeah, I like the horsey mythological characters. Yes, unicorns are just exquisite and horny, and Pegasus can fly, and that's really cool. V is for Violet. What is your favourite Violet book? Well, this was a tough one, for the simple reason that the majority of my books are either in my Kindle and don't really have much colour, or they're on my bookcase and have been for decades and are faded. So they're all kind of grey beige sort of colour now. So I decided for once in my sorry little life to not take something literally. So I'm not going to choose a book that's got violet on the cover. I'm going to choose a book that's got Violet inside it, specifically a character called Violet. Are you guessing where I'm going? It's Violet Beauregard from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. And yes, I know a lot of you think that he's problematic and I shouldn't be praising him or discussing him or any of that stuff, and that his books are a disgrace, blah-de-blah-de-blah. I disagree. I don't disagree about the problematic nature of some of his material. That is undeniable. But I grew up loving these books and I refuse to have them ruined for me. He's dead now. You won't be punishing him if you try and cancel him now. He's already dead. So let's just enjoy his books and have a little bit of perspective and recognise and understand that they were written in a different time and they brought joy to millions of children around the world. And so I'm singing Roald Dahl's praises because they brought an enormous amount of joy to my childhood during days that otherwise might have been quite bleak. So Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and the character Violet Beauregard. W is for why. If you have a BookTube channel, why did you start it? Because I had a desire to leap from rooftop to rooftop. True story. I started my channel because originally I was going to be a parkour channel, parkour and fitness. I thought it would be hilarious and I would get thin and I would do lots of stunts jumping from rooftop to rooftop. I bought a Spider-Man costume, but of course that ended up not happening. But that was the originator of this channel. That's how it all started to begin with. And then it was film reviews, and then it became book reviews, and now it's mostly tags. X is for xenocide. What novel featuring a xenocide interested you, if any? Well, once again, I'm afraid I'm going to have to dive back into the Feist books, the Midkemia books, and also specifically the Empire trilogy, because there's an alien race called the Chojar who are insectoid. They are kind of like giant ants. They're big enough for human beings to ride them in battle, although that's not necessarily a polite thing to do to them. They speak. You can communicate with them. They have a very structured society. They're very civilized. They're actually heroes, but it takes a while for us to discover that. They start off as as soldiers in the enemy race. It's not until we move to the Empire trilogy and look at everything from the opposite perspective that we start to appreciate the Chojar as a species that doesn't need to be exterminated. So there is a lot of Chojar extermination going on in the Feist books until we suddenly find out that they're the good guys, and they're actually better than the good guys. They're very special, but they have a hive mind. They have queens. You can sip tea with the queen and have a conversation if you're thus inclined. They're a very fascinating alien race. They're not just a scary monster to be exterminated. So they don't fully fit the parameters of this question, but they're certainly the most interesting alien race that I've ever read. Y is for YouTube. Apart from booktubers, what YouTube channels do you like to watch? Maximum of 3. I can't just do 3, I'm afraid. Well, I could, but I don't like being told what to do, so I rebel. So I'm going to do 4, just to be rebellious. The first one is Alana from Adventures and Naps. She's a Canadian who lives in the UK and has done for about 5 years, and she makes videos about being a Canadian in the UK. The next one is Downey Live, another Canadian. He does sort of travel adventure vlogs, and he does them very well. I really like travel and adventure vlogs, and particularly ones that are well photographed and well edited, and Downey Live does that, and he's also a very likeable young man as well. The next one I've mentioned before, Jammy Dodger. This is Jamie, and he is a trans channel. He talks a lot about trans matters and also about bisexual matters, but he's very, very funny and very likeable, and that's why I watch. And also incredibly educated, interesting and informative. I mean, he has a lot of stuff to impart, but for the most part he's funny, and he likes taking the piss out of homophobia, transphobia, all the phobias, and he does it very well. So I find him entertaining and, again, light-hearted. And the final one I'm going to mention is Carl Watson. And Carl Watson, like Downey Live, is a travel adventure vlogger. Carl is British, and he's a professional video editor. So his material is done to a very, very high standard. It's all professional quality. He shoots really good footage and edits it really well. So I love watching that because it gives me the vicarious thrill of travel without actually having to interact with human beings myself. Z is for Zero. What is your favourite book about nothing? Well, this is a difficult one, isn't it? And it's deliberately difficult. You're making my life hard on purpose, Jim. But I've come up with something, and I think it works. It's The Empty Space by Peter Brook, who is a British theatre producer and director. It's a book about theatre, darling, and I think it fits the profile of being about zero, empty space. That's the best I could come up with. And on that note, I think I'll call it a day. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave me a comment, and I will see you next time. See you later.